Hey, this is John with Two Moose Home Inspections. Welcome to the December 2021 in-service training. Last one of the year, let's make it a good one. If you're new to these in-service training videos, I recommend putting it at 2x speed because we have a lot of stuff to cover. This is basically what we do as a format that everything we've discussed in our monthly trainings, we want to bring out into the open and show a couple people a couple different things to either help educate realtors, help educate home inspectors, or just to be entertainment for anybody that wants to watch. So really highly recommend 2x speed. Let's get through it. Let's see what we can get done. The very first deficiency that we have here is that we have a service panel that is located behind the refrigerator. And so the problem with the service panel being located behind the refrigerator is that if you need to reset any one of those breakers, if you had any kind of electrical issue whatsoever, you need to quickly be able to turn off that electricity. And if a big metal box that is connected to electricity is in front of you from being able to turn off the electricity, it's going to be a problem. Additionally, if you had a lot of electrical work that needed to be done because of where the refrigerator is, you would have to pull out the refrigerator, more than likely empty everything out, or else it could spoil if the refrigerator is not able to have power. So then we move into cracks in the concrete masonry units. So that is the CMU. Basically, whenever you see cracks, there's step cracking, which just like the name implies, it is a step going up. And whenever you have that kind of cracking, that's not normally a good thing. Another thing to look at with the crack is it tighter at the bottom and wider at the top? And why is it that that would happen? Well, if we take a look at the bottom of a wall, if the wall starts to droop like this, then obviously it opens up the top and closes at the bottom, or vice versa, depending. And that will tell you kind of where there is either heaving or settling or anything along those lines. And so if we take a little bit of a closer look here, what you can see is that not only is it a step crack, but as we move up to the top, it's larger, and then at the bottom, it's smaller. Okay, so woe is me. It looks like, we're going to have to burn down the house or something because there's nothing that can be done. It's a loss. Well, it's not actually a loss. It's not that big of a deal sometimes. And so what we're looking at is, why is this happening? And is it brand new? Is it ongoing? And so a few things that you'd want to do as a homeowner, of course, and this is obviously dependent upon your level of risk aversion, the things that freak you out, scare you, whatever you think you can manage or handle. But the way I look at this is I say, okay, how old is the house? Oh, the house is, 40 years old. That's pretty good for 40 years. But what I'll do if I take ownership of the house is I will measure that. And then in a year, I will measure it again. And then the next year, I will measure it again. And then that's going to tell me, do we have any kind of movement? Is the settling ongoing, or has it stopped? And so it's really important that whenever you see something that is totally terrifying, such as this, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's not that big of a problem, but it is something to be mindful of. And again, if you and your realtor are in a position that you can negotiate, oh, woe is me, this is just too much. There's no way that I could possibly buy a house like this unless you gave me a couple $1,000s off, and then boom, that's how negotiations work. But obviously that's for your realtor to do, not the home inspector. So moving into the next thing, efflorescence. So whenever we have water pushing through concrete, what will happen is that we're going to have mineral deposits that are pushed through, and then they just settle as the water evaporates. They're going to settle right there on that concrete. The efflorescence does not go away. It'll be there forever. And so if at one point water pushed through, then you're going to have efflorescence. And if it no longer is pushing through, you're still going to have that efflorescence that is left there. And so we don't know, again, if it's active, inactive, or whatever. Is it just a seasonal thing? Has it caused any other issues inside of the house? And if not, then it just is what it is. Make sure that you have that space well ventilated. So that way, if during spring runoff, you tend to have a little bit of water, great. But I would definitely ask with the people that own the house, and I'd say, hey, what's going on with this? Why is it the way that it is? And maybe they can give you a little bit of insight of whether or not it's an issue for them or if it's not. So then we have a hole through the wall. Again, concrete masonry units, they are very particular about the way that they operate and how they can actually be load bearing or not. The difference between standing strong or crumbling. And whenever we take a look here, you kind of have to guess or wonder, what is it that happened? Did somebody hit it with a sledgehammer? Did something else happen? Why do we have this hole through here? Was this a part of construction? Was this a part of, whatever? But regardless, it is done incorrectly and it's not ideal. But is it an issue? Well, not really. I don't see any cracking above it. I don't see anything indicating that anything else is failing, sagging, or having an issue. If it were, then what are we going to do? We're going to install a steel beam, and we're going to make sure that that is well supported over that gap. So it's repairable, it's fixable. But for right now, you know what I'm scared about? Squirrels, chipmunks, and mice. That's what I don't want to have coming into my house, and so that is what we can fix. Not a big deal there. So this is a stairway to heaven, one way of getting there at least. And the thing is, a lot of times people say, oh, well, exterior stairs, you know, this, that, the other, it doesn't really matter. They're just, you know, stairs. Well, I believe that this particular house was being used as a rental. If it's predictable, it's preventable. If you can believe that somebody getting an Airbnb, VRBO, whatever it is, can fall down these stairs in the middle of winter and then sue you, then you should probably do something about it. Similarly, if you know that you could fall down carrying groceries, if you know that grandma or grandpa are going to come over and they could have a problem, then I would say, yeah, fix it, 100% fix it. There is no handrail whatsoever. Each stair is a different shape, different size, different whatever. And the funny thing is, this isn't even the worst stair set or sets of stair sets that we came across. You're going to see another one that is just ready to kill you as soon as you step on it. It's crazy, because at least this right here, I think that you can keep your traction. It's wide enough, and if you fall over to the grass, and yes, you can fall down the stairs. But anyway, make your stair sets safe, because the most injuries that can occur inside of a house, aside from like power tools and stuff like that, is actually falling down the stairs. And so you don't think about it whenever you have a lot of mobility, whenever you're young, but stairs are extremely dangerous. And so that's why we take them so seriously. And this is an easy fix. Put up a handrail. You know, you don't have to make the stairs perfect, but again, if it's predictable, it's preventable. If you can predict that you might trip going down the stairs, then put up a handrail, so that way at least you can grab that and then not fall the rest of the way down. All right. Anytime that you see duct tape, it's probably done incorrectly. It's just a telltale sign. So these gutters here were just totally buggered up, not doing well whatsoever. And how do we know that the gutter isn't performing the way it's supposed to? Well, you know, we just looked at it. That's about it. So what happens here? Why are these gutters messed up? Well, where we live, I am just so surprised the gutters survive in the first place. So we did an entire series about ice dams and what you can do about ice dams, how they work, how they operate, whatever. But whenever that ice dam forms, it's pushing all this pressure and it is curling. So it's just curling over the edge of that roof, and it's grabbing onto the gutter, and then it is pushing its force all the way down. So that's how we end up getting gutters that are all messed up like this. But I'm surprised at how many gutters survive. Now, this particular gutter has had a hard time, and so why is it that we have a little bit of duct tape down at the bottom? Well, the reason why that we have duct tape down at the bottom and a lot of the other issues that we have is because sometimes the water is going to come down, melt, then go into the tube, and then freeze and expand, and it's going to break a lot of these components. And so all the gutters need to be replaced if you actually want to be doing gutters, because in our area, if you have gutters, you probably should have heat tape running in the gutters, down the pipes, and at least a few feet past the end of the pipe to make sure that that we don't freeze inside the pipe. So I don't know, what would I do? I would have to walk the property, see if we have proper swales to make sure that we don't have water that is going to be pooling and coming down towards the foundation of the house. But me, I would probably just end up removing these gutters and then put in some landscaping features that prevent water from splashing onto the house and help to direct it into a direction, and just forego gutters completely on this particular house. So poor wire management. Yep. But here's the thing about poor wire management. Who cares about poor wire management? You know, we aren't going to come in there and be like, you have poor wire management behind your TV. It looks hideous, and we're just going to write that down on the report. That's not the case at all. Why is this being called out? Well, refrigerators are not a new thing in our modern homes, and so there should be a power outlet for this refrigerator to plug into that should be accessible behind the refrigerator. Whenever a house is being wired, they put into consideration, where are we going to set certain appliances? This has been going on for a very long time. People are very good at knowing that electricity needs to go in the kitchen to have a refrigerator. So why is it that this is not plugged in behind the refrigerator? What is wrong with the electrical system? What is wrong with that outlet? Why is it that we have to have an extension cord? And also, extension cords are not a permanent form of electricity distribution. And the reason why is because electrical extension cords like this have the possibility of overheating, which can lead to fire. They are not put in an area where they are free from abrasion or other kind of physical damage. So walking by, I could be stepping on that, and every time that I step on that wire, I am taking these wires and I am squishing them together every time I step on it, and I am fatiguing the wire, or I am fatiguing the protective covering on that, the insulated sheathing of the wire, and then I can get arcing. And I guarantee you, well, I know for a fact that this house does not have arc fault circuit interrupters. So without arc fault circuit interrupters, what will happen is if electricity starts arcing between these wires and the extension cord, well, then what just happened is that I overheated the extension cord is going to catch on fire, and the house is going to catch on fire. I'm going to have a very bad Christmas. So the main thing is extension cords. They cannot be protected as well as wires inside the wall. Additionally, they aren't designed for long-term use. And then this is also an indication that we have some other issue going on inside of the house. So a lot of things that we want to be thinking about on just such a simple thing as this. And yeah, the wires are poorly routed through the house, but there can be so much more that goes into it, which is why we try to have conversations with everybody, because in this particular thing, my job is not to alarm you and scare you and tell you all these things. My job is just to say, hey, we got some stuff going on. See an electrical contractor, find out why it is that this is going on. And then a part of our verbal conversation that we have with people is a little bit more of the diagnosis of like what we actually saw going into it and why it is that, in this case, it might be a big deal or it might not be a big deal. And overall, everything is fixable. It was built by a person. It can be fixed by a person. So moving on, air supply register grill not present. So the reason why this is important is not because you have to put on a new $4 grill, but now with inflation, maybe an $8 grill. That's not the problem. The problem is that what has gone in there? Do we need all of our air ducts professionally cleaned now? Like, do we have Matchbox cars and Legos and all kinds of other stuff inside of there? Do we have a whole bunch of dust and other air pollutants that basically whenever we are running our heat, that we are going to be putting all this dust and all this other stuff into the air? Do we have a rotting, moldy piece of bread that fell down in there that is now pushing mold spores into the house? So, you know, there's so many things that can happen just because it's missing a cover. And it's just interesting that on the surface, it's like, okay, this is an $8 fix, but maybe there's some other stuff in there. Do we want to go in with a vacuum cleaner? What do we want to do to make sure it's taken care of? And that's one of the interesting things whenever we talk about home inspecting and home inspectors is that the fix is $8 cover, but we could write a dissertation about every single issue that we find and the possible ramifications of each one. But the objective is not to freak people out because literally it can be fixed by the homeowner. It's just there's always a lot to consider, I guess, would be the best way to put it. So sewer scope obstruction. I can't remember if it was Shay or Jeremy doing the sewer scope, but basically you get so far and then you just can't anymore. And so then if you take a look here, this is basically, it looks like it was a crack in the pipe of some sort and a root system came in, started to grow. And so hopefully in this, you can get a roto-rooter that will come in, and then that roto-rooter is basically just going to clean out that pipe. And now what will happen is that that's probably going to be an annual maintenance type of thing that will have to happen with this house. Would I recommend having it, sleeved or replaced? Maybe, maybe not. I think that what we'd want to do is double check what's going on with this particular setup and if it is a big issue that is reoccurring all the time. So people also, in addition to sewer scopes, end up going through and having their water tested for drinkability, if it's safe to drink or not safe to drink. And there's all these, things and everything meets the mandatory requirements, but I really, really like the chemist that does all this. His name is Ed. He is amazing. And basically at the very, very bottom, the recommendation is filtration, and then basically to do a water softener because there's high iron and a whole bunch of other things like that. And so very proactively, he puts down some notes that says that, yes, you did meet the state mandatory standards. And in here, everything is perfectly fine, but if you really want that high quality water, if you really want to have zero issues in your home, this would actually be the recommendation. And I really like that because it shows that there's nothing to be fearful of, but if you want to take it to the next step, if you want to elevate the quality of the water that's in your house, boom, there you go, easy peasy. This one is great. This is now our highest radon level that we've gotten in Summit County. So this is 42.4 pictocuries per liter. Just so you know, anything above 4 means that action has to be taken. That is the EPA action level. So 42.4 is insanity. And AKA, it's not good because lung cancer is like the #1 primary thing. Adults are definitely affected, but children, because their lungs are developing so quickly, there's a lot of cellular division. Whenever we have an alpha particle shooting off of one of these radioactive radon elements, basically, what will happen is that alpha particle is going to punch out possibly some of the DNA that is in their cells. And we're talking about billions of releases that are going on. And so if a perfect storm happens and you breathe it in and a kid has it and it punches out the cell, the DNA in the cell, then we could have a bad replication of DNA inside of those cells, and then we can have long-term lung ailments. And so we really want to get those levels down. So it's like, okay, whoa, hey, John, we're talking about radioactive material in my house with my kids? Are you crazy? I don't even want the house. Okay, well, here's the deal. You go on a walk in the park, there's radon. You go anywhere in the world, there's radon. Radon is everywhere because there's a layer of uranium around the entire Earth, way down in the rocks. And a part of that is that it releases radon, and radon eventually wants to become lead, which is also not a great substance. But the thing is, every house has it. All you need to do is put a radon mitigation system, maybe $2,000 or less, that just makes a negative pressure, just sucks a little bit. It's like a straw. It's just sucking, creating a negative pressure in your house, and it's just coaxing the radon and saying, hey, don't bother those people. Come over here. Let's go out through the straw. It's going to be great. So these houses, this 42.4, am I worried about it? No, because the price to take care of a house that's at 42.4 is the same as taking care of a house that's at 5. It's the exact same procedure, and I can almost guarantee you, because this house was like buttoned up, meaning that it was very, very airtight, which is great because then you can control air exchanges using an ERV, energy recovery ventilator. But because the house was so tight, the radon didn't have anywhere to go. And so because of that, all we need to do is just put in a radon mitigation system, and then the house will be down below a 4, no problems, everything good. And it's the same price to fix a house that's this bad as it is to fix any other house that's at any level. So it's not a big deal, nothing you have to worry about, but it is something that needs to be done without a doubt, because you do need to worry about it. But as far as buying the house, it's not a big deal. You just get it done and then you're safe. And it's not like one house is better than the other. We're in a zone 1, highest levels of radon. I'm done ranting. Here we go. We have more roots inside of a sewer line. So whenever we have a pipe and then that pipe becomes displaced, whenever that pipe is displaced, trees, their roots can actually feel the vibration of water flowing, and then the roots are going to come towards that vibration. And then, or if there's water actually leaving the pipe, then as they get that moisture and they go to where there's higher levels of moisture. And so these roots have found a way in, and as they do that, they continue to expand until they've taken up all of the water, and now they, just like a beaver making a dam, they now have limitless water, and the roots are very, very happy. You as a homeowner, not so happy. Again, Roto-Rooter, do your thing, and then I would just keep an eye on it from year to year, and then that way you can make a decision about what the next step is you need to do. I think it was Jeremy that found this one. I like this. This is awesome. He was like, wow, that propane tank is like really dangerously close, not only to this house, but to these windows. And I'm not a fan, because what if, the propane tank has an issue and it's leaking? What if it is overheating and could explode? What if whatever? And as it turns out, there are a lot of standards about where propane tanks are and are not allowed to be placed based off of the size of that propane tank. So in this particular propane tank, it was too close by, I want to say, like a foot or two. And so as a homeowner, do you say, oh, well, I really need to have this done, replaced, whatever? Maybe, maybe not. It totally depends on you and your risk aversion. Because, 1 foot, how much of a difference is 1 foot going to make if your propane tank explodes? Probably not that much. How much is 1 foot going to make if your propane tank is leaking propane and you have like an open window and somebody's sleeping in the room? Probably a lot. So you just need to make your decision about what is appropriate and what isn't, what you're willing to deal with, what you're not. And the odds of having something bad like that happen, very, very low, but it's still one of those things that you just need to be mindful of. All right, anchoring inadequate. I love this one. This one just makes me grin. The amount of effort that was put into doing it wrong just makes me smile. So here's the deal. Whenever I say anchoring, what I'm saying is that, let's say that you were able to lift up this deck, all right? That means that from the ground, from where the footer is, it should be connected or anchored to that main post, which should be connected or anchored to the floor joists. And that's the way it should be. Everything should be one unit. And the reason why is because then if there is movement from like air blowing and causing increases or decreases in pressure, well, then I want everything to work together as one unit to prevent any weird flexions or any kind of movement that shouldn't be there. So anyway, it's not connected to anything. So you could like Karate Kid your way through this pole, and this pole is just going to fall right down. It's not connected to anything. And then if you look down at the bottom, they took the time to notch everything to make it fit on top of another log that they put over there. Just silly stuff. And then there's obviously a whole bunch of other issues with this particular thing. So basically one of the joists was broken. So that could have been like somebody jumped on the thing a little bit too much, you know, or broke it in some other way. And then you can just sister that up. So basically you have the broken one, and then you can put another one right next to it. And then with the proper nailing schedule, put that together, and then it's going to work as one unit. So anyway, upstairs, no guardrails. This is wild to me. There obviously, I understand there's an aesthetic that has to be made, but not only could a small child fall through this, but grandpa could fall through this. Your dog could fall through this. Anything could fall through this. This is so unsafe. One of the most unsafe that we've seen in a little while. And anyway, yes, it looks gorgeous. It looks cool. It's very open, but there are other ways of doing an open looking type thing and without putting your family at risk. Again, if it's predictable, it's preventable. If you think somebody could be there with their toddlers for Airbnb, you know, you're renting this out, then yeah, you need to do something about it. If it's just going to be you and you are happy and comfortable with this risk, then don't change anything. If you know that there are never going to be little kids, if you tell your dog you got to be smart or you got to be tough or you know whatever, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough or something like that. So yeah, if the dog falls off the edge, then that's on the dog. You know, like if you're comfortable with that, more power to you. You don't have to change anything. Just because it is a violation of a code somewhere that has been adopted by some municipality somewhere and is written in code because people have died because of this, doesn't mean that you have to follow the rules. It would be nice if you did, but it doesn't mean that you have to. And if you are comfortable accepting that risk, then yeah, don't change anything. Nobody's going to be like pounding on your door saying, sir, I have a warrant for your arrest because you have an unsafe railing. Like that's not going to happen. So if you want to change it, change it. If you don't want to change it, don't change it. But it's good to know whenever things are safe and whenever things are not. Speaking of which, this is the stairway to heaven. So this set of stairs is the most dangerous thing that I think I've ever seen. Not only are there a ridiculous number of stairs, and you can see that that basically the stairs, they come down to this platform right here and continue basically up and over. So they come down the stairs here onto the platform and then up and you keep going down over this direction. Just absolutely terrifying. Oh, and then so here is from the platform and then further down. So you can just fall right past the platform. But the thing that really scares me is that up here, you could be standing up here and basically just walk off the edge. Like there's nothing here to stop you from taking a diagonal right off the edge. That is terrifying, and how high it is. And then all these stairs here are super duper slippery. And then if you see down at the bottom, everything already has snow. This is before the snow season has even started. And it is a good way to get yourself extremely hurt. This is the most dangerous, although, you know, stable enough. It's just the most dangerous set of stairs ever. And what do you need to fix this? Railings on both sides. Has to be. But it's also very narrow, so I don't know. It's I would definitely want some things to be done because that is an extremely unsafe set of stairs. And it boggles my mind because it's like, was this an afterthought? Doesn't look like it necessarily because of the way this is set up. You know, that there weren't any railings set up in between these two. So I think that it was a part of the original design. But if that's the case, then did they build this without a permit? And if they built it without a permit, does that mean that there are other issues? Yes, there were other issues. There were quite a few other issues. So it's pretty possible that this was more than likely not built with a permit because no permitting department would allow you to get through with a set of stairs like that, because that is a death trap is what that is. So baseboard heater not working. Thank goodness for thermal cameras, because we can be like, oh, it doesn't seem like it's working. But it's nice whenever we have a thermal camera and we can just snap that photo and we can say, listen, it is not working. Here's the definitive proof that it's not working. Here's what we need to have fixed. As opposed to being like, well, it doesn't feel that warm. We can say this is way too hot. We have that with the thermal camera. These things are working. These things are not. Thermal cameras, awesome. Love them. They're as good as my flashlight. Use them to see things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to see. Love them to death. So the next thing is the sewer scope, unknown union type. Okay, so what do we mean by unknown union type? Well, the thing is, with the sewer scope camera, you can really only see in one direction, which kind of makes me wonder, why is it $10,000? I don't know. It's basically, you know, a phone. It's a phone on a stick, and I could put a stick on my cell phone for less money than what a sewer scope costs. But what I'm getting at is that that lens is pointed forward. It's not able to look at a 90-degree angle and inspect that part of the union. What we're looking at is it's going from SDR35 down to PVC. So that's the green stuff is SDR35, and then the white stuff is PVC. Now, where they are, it's kind of weird. And it doesn't look like any roots are coming in or anything like that. So then do they have some kind of rubber, basically union that allows them to be at that weird angle that is mechanically tightened on either side, and it is still perfectly good, although it looks not great? Yeah, that could be the case, that it's a perfectly acceptable way of doing things, but we're still going to bring that to the attention of the homeowner, because I don't know who did the work, and I don't know if that rubber gasket is still intact. It's just, whenever we see stuff like that, it's always better to err on the side of caution. Does anything need to happen? No, nothing needs to happen. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Nothing got backed up. It's perfect. So yeah. All right, service drop. So electrical wires. If you can reach up and touch electrical wires and the ground at the same time, you're going to have a bad time. And so we really, really, really recommend not doing that. And so whenever stuff is lower than it's supposed to be, you definitely want to talk to utility company. The utility company should be able to come out and get things taken care of. I'm not sure if you would be, depending on how things are set up, you as the homeowner might be responsible for some of the repair cost, or you might not be responsible for any of it, depending on why it is that these wires are as low as they are. But the utility company is the first step to get it figured out. So the receptacle is scorched. What does that mean? Well, what that means is there was some amount of arcing. And again, arcing is extremely hot, extremely hot. It's the same as whenever you're welding. You know, you're talking like 2,000 degrees. And so whenever you have arcing, you have a risk of a fire. So why was it that we had arcing? And that's the really good question. And so if a receptacle has arced, you should just replace the receptacle. Something might have been going wrong on the inside. And in addition to that, if arcing occurred, maybe you had like a smooth, flat surface that the blade of your plug is going to rub up against, and now we have good electricity. But because there was an arc, then what happens is that we now have some kind of a deformation, like a pit. And so now whenever I go to put that blade in, I now have a gap. And because there is a gap, in between the gap and the blade of my plug, there is going to be some arcing going back and forth. And so now we're going to have a hot outlet. Hot, not in the sense that well, it is electrified, but hot in the sense that it is producing heat because it doesn't have a good connection. So if it has a good connection, then the electricity goes where it's supposed to go. If it has a bad connection because there was an arcing that pitted this part, then that obviously can continue to increase heat and have problems. And so if whatever plug was used is still good, great, but we don't know what the condition is on the inside of that. And so I would just replace that receptacle and just start fresh. All right, trash in the crawl space. Why do we tell you about trash in the crawl space? Because I had my home inspected one time, and now I own a home inspection company. And I had to take out, I think it was 2 or 3, well, it was like 2.5, but trailers, dump trailers full of just trash from the basement of the house that I ended up buying, or from the crawl space. And that was disgusting and terrible. Full Tyvek suit, respirator, mouse droppings everywhere, whatever. Nobody caught it. And so that's why we always do our best that if we see trash on the property, and it would, the other inspector also, same thing. They just didn't mention anything about trash on the property, and it ruined the house buying process. It was like, oh, I have to deal with this now? Like, and you can in the negotiations say, you will remove all trash from this property and get that done. And that can be a part of the negotiations. And man, I'll tell you, it's just kicking the pants whenever you get to your house and it's like, oh, now I'm spending a couple $1,000s of cash right now for dump trailers and all that kind of stuff to get all this junk taken out of this crawl space. Some people are just pack rats, and that's what it is. So anyway, tree too close. If the tree is unhealthy, if the tree is overhanging, if the tree has branches that have already damaged the roof, then we're just going to tell you the tree is too close. Sometimes the roots are so large that it's going to cause a heaving issue with the foundation. And so we just want to get rid of trees that are just too close to the house. Now, in addition to that, if you watched our wildfire series, then you know that you need to have a defensible space, and a tree like this is too close because it's no longer defensible space. So you really need to get rid of trees that close to your property to make sure that during the fire season, you're safe. In addition, this tree just was unhealthy and is posing a huge risk. And especially if my head was the house and the tree is leaning this direction, that needs to go. If the tree was leaning the other direction, sure, let it fall. It'll do its own thing, hopefully. But in general terms, if a tree looks like that, it's time for it to go. So inside the service panel, we talked about this numerous times, but whenever you have an electrical wire, you need to make sure that you've put a wire nut or anything else onto that exposed electrical wire. And you say, but John, the electricity comes from The electricity comes from the service panel and then is distributed out. Why do I have to worry about a wire that is not connected to anything in the distribution panel? Well, because you are correct. The electricity goes out, but as it turns out, it is a circuit. So the electricity that goes out has to come right back in. And if that's what's happening, then those wires can be coming back with electricity. They could have been connected or crossed somewhere else in the house, making those wires extremely dangerous. So I just recommend always putting a wire nut on any wire that is not properly terminated inside of the electrical panel. Don't kill my inspectors, and don't kill yourself. That's the recommendation. All right, fungal growth. So a lot of times solutions will be made using caulking, and then the caulking kind of lifts up and then stuff gets underneath places and then it grows. So there are things that can be done normally, just like cleaning the bathroom, doing whatever. And then I think you might just need to put a new bead of caulking that has an antimicrobial property to it, and then you should be golden. So super easy peasy. All right, this one was wild. So we've talked about freeze and thaw before, and basically what happens is that there is a frost line. And so we might have the surface, so the outside air is freezing, and then that makes the soil cold, and then you go down, in our case, 48 inches down, and then the soil is no longer frozen. So that 48-inch area is able to freeze and thaw. And so what happens is whenever you build something and you put a footer down, or a footing down, you need to make the base large enough that the freeze-thaw cycle will not have any effect on it, or you need to go deeper than that layer to make sure that that freeze-thaw doesn't get any liquid underneath, and it expands and pushes up and then freezes, and then there's nothing. And then expands, pushes up, melts, and then there's... So let me start over. You have the footer. You have this. Water gets under, and it is thawed. It freezes, it's going to push it up. It then thaws, and then it freezes, and it's going to push it up. And so then what's going to happen is that several times throughout the year or season to season, we're going to have issues like this, where not only did it heave up, but it is also pushing out, and we actually have a whole bunch of erosion on that hillside. So we have a footer that is lifting and moving in this direction, which is telling me that we have a freeze-thaw erosion issue that is now making this deck extremely unsafe. And there are a whole bunch of other issues going on as well. But the main thing is that it looks good. You know, they use the sonnet tube, they put in the concrete, that looks so good, except for the fact that they did not go 48 inches deep to get below the frost line to make sure that they're actually in a solid surface. So anyway, you gotta be really mindful whenever you're building things. And a lot of people think that they know what they're doing to do it correctly, but I guarantee you laziness or a lack of education puts them in a situation where they're like, I don't want to dig the 48 inches. We've gone 40 inches. I'm sure it's fine. It's not. It's not. You got to go deep enough. And then whenever you're on an exposed hillside like this, so whenever the hillside is like this, you got to keep in mind, you got 48 inches to go this way. So if you have a hillside like this and you go 48 inches down, well, maybe you don't have 48 inches side to side until you're 60 inches down. And so on a hillside, you really have to do the math. You have to figure out the angles, and you have to figure out exactly how deep you have to go with that footing, or hit bedrock, one or the other. So then moving on, areas of physical damage on this siding here. All right, so they replaced it. Great. They didn't stain it. Not great. But here's the real issue, is that now because they replaced all those pieces of wood, we now have a vertical seam up and down. And you know what water likes to do? Water likes to go into the vertical seam and then into your house. So not ideal at all, but at least they put wood back in there. Does it matter? Maybe. We'll see what side, like depending on what side of the house that is, how much wind blown stuff there is. There is a plastic wrap behind, but I don't know whenever they cut that, did they also cut and damage the plastic wrap that was wrapping the house as a vapor barrier? I have no idea. What I can assume is that they did it wrong, because people normally do things wrong. And so then the question is, do I have to redo the work to make sure my house is safe? The answer is meh, maybe, maybe not. It's totally up to you as an individual, but I would just say that it's something that you should be mindful of, that if you start to see any discoloration on the wall on the inside of this, it's because water is getting through that vertical gap. So water supply, wellhead unprotected. So this particular wellhead is right next to a driveway, and if your car were to slip in the slightest bit, then it is going to run into this wellhead. And I will tell you, repairing a wellhead is so expensive, extremely expensive. So you need to make sure that that is protected. So put up a metal, anything. Don't put a rock there. Please don't put a rock, because then a snowplow is going to hit the rock and the rock's just going to slide and it's going to do its thing anyway. Dig around it. put up a special, metal thing, flags, whatever. We just don't want it to be hit by a snowplow. We don't want it to be hit by a car that's out of control. So something to think about. All right, clean out cap missing. All right, so this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is why do I care that a clean out cap for $1.25, realistically $1.80, that's missing? Why do I care? Well, the reason that I care is because kids love to throw things into holes. All right, so a kid threw something in there? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Did they take a whole bunch of gravel and was it fun to put it in? And be honest with yourself. Have you done that as a kid? Have you been like, oh, there's a pipe. I'm going to put some rocks in there. Oh, wonder what happens. Well, what happens is that they back up your entire septic line or your whole sewer, line, and then your house backfills with human waste, excrement, whatever, floods your entire basement, and then so on and so forth. So thanks, Jimmy. Anyway, my recommendation would be put a cap on that. Flush through a whole bunch of water. See if you have a backup whenever you're using clean water as opposed to waiting until something really bad happens. So you fill up every bathtub, start by flushing all the toilets, start running the bathtubs, then flush all the toilets again. If you don't have any water backup after draining that extensive amount of water, then you're perfect. And with that, then you are on watch duty where it's like, okay, if something happens, turn off, close all the bathtubs drains so that way it doesn't continue draining. And then we're just going to put our hand on top of like a floor drain or whatever where it's coming back out of, and wait for the water to slowly move down and then go from there. That is one way to make sure nothing is good. Or you can just hire us to do a sewer scope. Either one. $275, maybe $300 if it's a standalone, or you can risk flooding your house. It's up to you, whatever works best for you. But anytime that a cap is missing, that goes back to it's only like $1.80. So why do I care? I care because it can have compounding issues for the house and the health of the house. All right, shower drain stopper missing. The linkage on this stuff sometimes breaks pretty easily, and so it can be a pain to reinstall. There's a finesse, like a technique to installing this. So I would just have a plumber come out and knock it out of the park. Damaged laminate flooring. This was actually right next to the main entrance, the main door. And the problem with this is that I think that it was just shoes that were, snowy or whatever that were dripping. And then whenever it drips, it then, of course, damages the wood. And you can see it's the end grain. Trees are like vampires. Even after death, they continue to suck and they just suck in all that water into the end grain. And then that's why you see the type of damage that you see there. So plumbing stack vent under 6 inches. So what happened? Well, the plumbing stack vent comes up and it is sticking out of the roof. And it was at one point more than 6 inches, but then as we talked about ice dams and other types of things like that, the glacial power of snow moving on a roof basically just took that and then broke it down and broke it off completely. And so then what do we need to do? Well, we need to either get in the attic space or from the top, get it cut, get it replaced, whatever. So why is that? Because if not, then we need to replace the boot first, which is the seal around that. And then we need to have it stick up high enough, because if not, then what can happen is whenever snow and ice goes over top of that, then we don't have the ventilation that we need to have. We can have issues with sewer gas. We can have issues with not being able to drain properly. Basically think of that as a straw. And if you put your finger on top of a straw, then I can put my straw into a glass of water, lift up, and now I have water in the straw that isn't draining anywhere until I release my finger, and then the water in that straw can go wherever else. And so it's just important that we have good ventilation for our plumbing stuff, so we need to get that fixed for sure. Hopefully before winter comes, who knows? I don't think that we need to say it, but this particular structure is not good. It's just not good. There's no sense in us going in and saying, oh, well, there's damage to the siding. The door squeaks. We have a cracked whatever. There's an air gap. There's a broken window. Nah, just this is effectively an unsafe structure. We aren't going to go into it. There's no reason for us to go into an unsafe structure. This was not built following any kind of code, protocol, procedure, or building method that is approved. So there's just no sense in going into it. It should be demolished. And why should it be demolished? It's working just fine to do what I want it to do. Then great, if you're comfortable with that. But again, if it's predictable, it's preventable. If you can predict that a kid could be practicing, basketball or, fake wrestling with a friend and they bump into the wall and the whole structure falls down. If you can predict that that is possible with this particular structure, then you can prevent it by just getting rid of the structure. So think of it like that. All right, this is the last one we're going to end on here. So this is sewer scope where there are roots. And so there are a few little roots that are growing in, but what's interesting about this, if you take a look, is that it almost looks like that's a rock. It looks like, and I bet you, I can almost guarantee it. I don't know for a fact, obviously, because I wasn't there whenever this was installed. But the way that this looks to me is that a plumbing line was installed, somebody was backfilling the line with dirt, and then a part of that backfill is that you backfill the plastic line with dirt, and then you use like a vibratory tamper to tamp down the dirt, and then you can continue to add whatever kind of backfill you want until it's until you've basically filled in that trench. And I feel like a rock fell in there. The vibratory tamper pushed that rock. It broke into the plastic, and now that rock has been lodged there since probably day one, since the very first day that was put in. That's why I really think that if you're going to have a sewer line installed, the very first thing that should happen after they put down that main course, before they filled everything completely in, is that they should run a sewer scope through it once they've gotten that initial tamping. And then if they find that everything is okay, then they can fill it in the rest of the way. And then once they've done the final tamping and grading, then you should run a sewer scope again, just to make sure we don't have issues like this, because it does happen very frequently. But yeah, I bet you that rock breaking through the plastic has been there since day one. So do we need to do anything about it? Nope. But what if instead of that, there was this 10,000 square foot house, the pipe, they actually bent it over a rock as they were backfilling it, and the opening was this big, and the opening should have been, like double that. Should have been like, well, it should have been 4 inches, and it was only about an inch. So anyway, that type of a flow restriction can definitely cause some serious issues whenever it comes to the house and being able to operate the way it's intended. So anyway, that pretty much wraps it up. I mean, that is the basics of like what happens during our in-service training. We talk about different issues like this, why it is that these issues have a lot of underlying baggage that they bring with them about why it is that it can have issues with your house that isn't necessarily readily apparent in the moment, to kind of help us always have it in the forefront of our mind that we need to not just be looking at the issue at the face value, but we need to understand that if we see this, we probably need to go to this location of the house to check for that, just to make sure that things are working the way they're intended. So that wraps it up. Yeah, if you have any questions or if you'd like to schedule a home inspection, please visit 2moosehomeinspections.com. Have a wonderful day.